Every business wants good customer reviews. Every customer wants a good experience. So what happens when both sides click? Or in some cases, when they don't? From Yelp and Entrepreneur Media, this is Behind the Review.
Behind the review, dig deep into behind the review, get all the news, food, flowers, fixing, make business boom. Behind the review, dig deep into.
I'm Emily Washcovick, Yelp's small business expert. Behind the Review features conversations with business owners and customers who wrote one of their Yelp reviews. In our discussions, we talk about lessons they've learned that could be used by other businesses to improve their own reviews and their bottom line. This week, I sat down with Vincent Berretta, one of the owners of Tres Lecheria, a previous Behind the Review guest. Vincent recently joined our local business summit to talk about establishing financial strength for stability and growth. And it made me want to bring him on to share the journey their business has been on these past few years, as they've scaled from a bakery into a wholesale supplier for grocery chains. To kick us off, I asked Vincent to tell the story of the business for those of you who haven't listened to our first episode together. And if you do want to give that episode a listen, it's linked in the show notes. And I also linked the recording of the local business summit session that Vincent spoke on. It's a great conversation about budgeting, funding, and access to capital. Now, here's my conversation with Vincent.
My name is Vincent Berretta, and I'm the co-owner of Tres Lecheria, formerly Cubes Baking Company. I actually got my start originally, or my professional career, in cloud SaaS sales. So I've sold kind of like financial data software to large institutional investors like pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, asset managers, stuff like that. Pretty like heady, boring stuff. Like definitely not as exciting as what we're doing right now. But I kind of stumbled into sales, and not something I had really intended. I actually started at law school, and I was going to do that, but then the financials didn't seem to make sense. And, I'm always about the dollars and cents. Like, that's kind of where my main focus is. So that's where I started. And I lived in Seattle. And around that time, I was doing pretty well professionally. And I bought a house, and it was a little bit bigger than what I needed. And so I had this extra room opened up and took to Craigslist and put the room up for sale, or for rent rather. And Kevin was like one of the first people to answer it. And I read his bio. I just thought he sounded like a really cool guy. And we just hit it off like right away. And he moved in, super nice guy. We became friends almost immediately, going out, having a good time. He was a cake decorator and had been for a long time, like always had been in that. And I had worked in food service before, so I was kind of familiar with what he was doing. And kind of the genesis of our working together was, we were sitting around one day at a table, and he was showing me this cake that he was making for a client, and he was doing these large custom wedding cakes. I was like, dang, how much does something like that cost? I was like, this cake costs $2,000. I was like, $2,000 for a cake? I go, well, how much the ingredients cost? He's like, let's see. He's like, well, about $20. I was like, $20. I was like, all right, we got to go into business together because those margins are insane. And so that's before I knew anything about, what the actual costs are to running a business. But I was like, if the ingredients are that and that's that, like that's dynamite. Like I'll put whatever money I have into that. And then ended up doing that. Unfortunately, put in more than I was intending to put in. And so he was like, I've always had this concept for a bakery, and here's what it is. And he kind of gave me this almost like a business presentation of what he wanted to do. And I was like, I like all of that. That sounds really good. I grew up in Eastern Washington and been pretty familiar with like Mexican panaderías. And he grew up with that in Texas. And I was like, yeah, there's one actually in my hometown that I love so much. And it'd be cool to do it here. And he's like, yeah, I want to do it with all like natural ingredients and like high quality stuff. And here's what I want to call it. I want to call it cubes because I want to make everything in like cube shape. So it'll be kind of be our marketing calling card. So you get a, cube cupcake or you get a cube pan dulce and you're like, well, I know exactly what that's from. So I was like, well, that's a great idea. So we did that, and it took quite a while to build out the space. And like I said, we spent a lot more money. We spent twice as much money as we had penciled out. So that's kind of, as people are putting together their business plans, like they always say, like, add 20%. I'm like, add 100%, honestly, if you want to be safe, because like that can only help you, especially if you come out of it under that and you got a little extra cash, like that's only going to help in the future.
Vincent makes such a great point. Anytime I've talked to a business owner about opening, upgrading, or customizing a brick and mortar location, they've shared that at least in that initial time, they were way over budget. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about any cost investment that you need to make in your business to try something new. Some businesses don't require a monetary investment from the owner to sell or market certain offerings, especially if you're a service provider. But if you're a bakery, you need to buy all the ingredients and equipment in order to create a sellable product. Okay, back to Vincent and the journey of the bakery.
So we built out the space, and we did a lot of the building out ourselves. And there was a lot of pitfalls that we hit that I think if we would have taken a step back and taken a little bit more time and said, okay, let's dedicate 6 months to just kind of researching this and researching how to build out a space and like what all the stuff that's required instead of just launching straight in. On the other hand, like sometimes you just got to get in the weeds and get going, because you don't know what's going to go wrong before you actually get in there. So it's like, you always hear the fail fast, fail often, like get in, hurry up, like get going. The sooner you start, the sooner you can start being successful. If I could go back and talk to myself, I would have been like, you should research these things because it might cost you less money in the long run. But we did all that. Finally, we got open, and the first year did okay. Sales were pretty good. Second year, a little bit better. Third year, we were really starting to get into it. So we were doing the retail bakery side, which pretty much kept the lights on and kept Kevin employed. And I think like paid for part of one person. But the real big revenue generator was becoming the custom cakes, which is, what I always wanted to focus on. So we were getting booked out through the summer. We were having to turn people away, and we were attending all these functions, like, wedding functions and stuff like that. But anyway, so we were building up this name as like these really good cake decorators, or Kevin was rather. And he was going on shows as well. So he was competing on Netflix. He won the Christmas Sugar Rush episode. I got a lot of notoriety from that. Some other challenges that he was on, he won as well. I think he won 2, and he was on like 3 or 4. So that was really great. And like the extra cash that came in, and also put us on the map for a lot of people. And they came to visit just because they saw us in the shows. And then, so as we're starting to hit our stride, like looking at probably our first profitable year, the pandemic hit, and it was the craziest thing I've ever seen in terms of business. Like obviously the pandemic was the craziest thing I've ever seen, but in terms of business, seeing the inbox of canceled cake orders for their weddings in the fall, because I think lockdowns happened around February, March-ish. I think there was like rumblings in October, and then kind of like getting into the new year, people started canceling orders. And then actually Kevin got COVID really bad sometime around that time. But so people were just like, we better pull out because we don't know. And, technically we should have been able to hold on to their deposit because of our agreement. But we were like, oh, we just can't do that to people. We don't know what their job situation is going to look like. And like, hopefully we have enough money in the bank by the time everyone pulls out. Some people didn't pull out either. They just kind of kept it in there for a long time. They're like, we know you guys are struggling too. We're going to keep it in there. And that was super great. People would still come by the shop and try to, buy as much as they could from the window when they were allowed to do that. But essentially, yeah, like that whole business side of the business was destroyed. And I was like, there's no way we can keep this going with just the retail, and we don't even know what that's going to look like. At the same time, we had one dessert that would pretty, like, not even regularly. It was just like the day it was put out and fly off the shelf. And that was for Tres Leche's product. And I remember when we were opening up, Kevin was like, I'm trying to decide if I want to make a Tres Leches or not. And I was like, I've actually never had it. He's like, oh, it's really good. You love it. And I do. He's like, it's really difficult, but I'd feel like really remiss if I didn't make it. And he goes, wouldn't it be funny? And he said this before we opened our doors. So this was back in like 2015 or 16. He goes, wouldn't it be funny if like that became like the star product and we had like all these cases of like Tres Leches in here and it was just a big Tres Leches store? And I was like, yeah, that'd be pretty funny. Ha ha ha. Flash forward to now, it's pretty much all we have in the shop. So we always kind of had that in mind, I guess, like not seriously, but anyway, so that product was doing really well. And it also just so happened that we were selling it wholesale in one store in Seattle. We had it going in one store. And that was just kind of an experiment, like not something we were really pursuing. I think we had a former employee that went there and then told them, hey, I used to work here. This is a really good product. You guys should think about bringing it in. They're like, okay, we'll try it out. Did really well there. Well, that store had like 18 stores back in Portland.
When Vincent says stores, he's talking about grocery stores. They had their bakery and their custom cake business, but the pandemic impacted both. Vincent, as a numbers guy, was zoned in on their profit and loss sheet, what they were spending on and what they were selling. Tres Leche's cake was selling, and it was having a good little test run as a buy fresh bakery option in a local grocery store. That happened to be a part of an 18-store chain. You see where we're going with this?
So at the time, Kevin and I sat down and we're like, we need to decide what we're going to do. And he's like, well, what if we went full in on the Tres Leches? And I was like, I was thinking pretty much the exact same thing. So we called up New Seasons and we said, hey, listen, can we be in all of your stores in Portland? And they're like, are you kidding? Absolutely. In fact, we've got a backhaul program from Seattle. So you can just drop all of your product off at our store there and we'll take it all down for you, free of charge. And then, whatever you charge us, you charge us. So almost immediately we got into that. And so Kevin's doing almost all that work by himself. And kind of at the same time, he's like, I'm running out of space to store this stuff. Like we're not set up to do this kind of production right now. And that's when they started offering PPP money and loans. I was like, well, let's like take out some money, revamp the building. Like let's lean into this. So we took some money, as little as we could, and totally changed the store. It took us like a week or so. It wasn't very long at all because we knew exactly what we wanted. And there were people that we'd already worked with and they knew what we were trying to go with. The store looks beautiful now, way better than when we did it all ourselves. Yeah, they did all that, looked beautiful. We put in a walk-in freezer with like more space than we thought we would ever need, foreshadowing, and completely retooled the space. And so now like the space is retooled, we're selling that wholesale and we're also still doing it retail as well. And just since then, it kind of started off like retail was still slightly better. And now the wholesale is really starting to eclipse the retail side. The retail side is really nice to have because we get to, debut and try new flavors and see what people think of it and like get like a firsthand idea about that. And we also get people that report back to us from, like stores they visit, like are they slacking it out well? Are they doing a bad job, with this? Or do they have the product on hand? So like there's a lot of interaction and a lot of benefit we get out of having that brick and mortar space. And that's something like a distributor told us a long time ago. He's like, I wouldn't get rid of that if you don't need to, because you can get a lot of value there.
Okay, I have to cut in quick. If you're a long time Behind the Review listener, you know that every episode, the one thing we definitely talk about, no matter what business, in what industry, in what city across the country, we need to talk about engagement with customers and getting their feedback in all sorts of ways, but especially through reviews. And I love this advice Tres Lecheria has continued to live by. They started with a brick and mortar because that was what business ownership was to them. It's what a bakery is all about. But now that they're more focused on production for their grocery store partnerships, in terms of volume and revenue, the brick and mortar location acts like a customer testing ground and an in-person suggestion box. I also love how in this case, their customers are almost like little spies for them out in the world, seeing how their product is displayed at their local grocery store. And I think that really speaks to the fact that customers are happy to share their opinions and experiences with you, especially if you genuinely care about what they have to say. But you have to ask them questions. Like, what flavors are you loving? Any flavor you wish we made? These types of interactions, whether in person with customers or even online through social media polls or newsletter surveys to your customer list, ask your customers questions and let them know you'd love to hear about their experience if they have anything to share. Remember when Vincent said that they talked to that 18 location chain that had them in one store to see if maybe they wanted to carry their product in more? That was another great lesson, to make the proposal. In addition to asking your customers questions, don't be afraid to pitch your business. If you have an idea that's formed out, shoot your shot in the most cliche way. The worst thing that happens is you get a no or a no response. But the best thing that happens is you get a yes. And the most likely thing that happens is you get some feedback and some insight that helps you make your next pitch. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back. The IKEA Business Network is now open for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Join for free today to get access to interior design services to help you make the most of your workspace, employee well-being benefits to help you and your people grow, and amazing discounts on travel, insurance, and IKEA purchases, deliveries, and more. Take your small business to the next level when you sign up for the IKEA Business Network for free today at ikea.us/business-network. That's ikea.us/business-network. Back to Tres Lecheria. They went from that original 18 stores to 80 or so stores by June of 2020. And they were in conversation with another serious chain for about 80 more stores when I talked to Vincent. So about 160 to 200 grocery stores in the next 6 to 12 months. That sounded insane to me. I had to better understand how it's working operationally. So are all of those also on the West Coast and you're pumping everything out of Seattle still and then it's getting sent?
For now, yeah, for now. So we've had discussions with co-packers. I've met some of them in person and looked at their capacity and kind of coached them on how we make the product. And I will say it's like, no one is going to treat your product as well as you treat it yourself. And like, there's been people that have, asked us about licensing the product and stuff like that. And one thing that we've always kind of been cautious about is the brand quality, and just the cake quality, because we take it very seriously. It's like our only product, and we're both very serious about what we do. And Kevin's serious about the aesthetics and mouthfeel and stuff like that. I'm serious about like, hey, is this high quality? Do people actually want this? Like, we don't want to just race to the bottom to just make something to put out there. So we're both on the same page about that, which is really good. And the same holds true for, working with a co-packer, because you want to make sure, are you guys going to take it as seriously as we're going to take it? And if it doesn't seem like it, I don't know. You might want to reconsider or talk to somebody else, because a lot of the times they're going to try to race to the bottom and you're going to have to be the one to be like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. And, I think it's an important thing to point out, because if you're more focused on like growth and just, we want to be in more stores, I'm even thinking geographically, like it could sound really cool if there's this huge grocery chain that wants to have you. But if they're in the Midwest, like probably not something that right now you can do. Like you would need to find a centralized location closer to there. And I think that's just a good lesson for everyone. I mean, that could be trying to go from 1 brick and mortar to 2 brick and mortars. It's like growth is great, but you really do need to keep quality control in mind.
Yeah, especially at our size. And, if you're dealing with more of the independent restaurants and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, obviously, like, where's the opportunity cost lie? Where's the low hanging fruit? Do you really need to like go across town and open this here? Or can you get that growth by serving some other market nearby? Like, can you run ads that'll bring in this neighborhood over here? Can you do something like that, or like a promotion? Or can you do like maybe a pop-up once in a while in like some farmer's market, a place you want to try out? Like, does it have to immediately be like that kind of growth? And I think we got in a little bit of trouble with that when we were trying to expand into California, and just like, you can't always recreate the exact same thing that made you successful in the first place. Like, every situation is going to be different. There's going to be different luck or bad luck involved. Just the demographics of the people are going to be different. Like, just the ideas behind what they think they like, or it's just different. It's just like totally different. So it's not just plug and play generally. I mean, like a McDonald's maybe, but like something like what we do, or I'm sure a lot of the people that listen to your podcast and a lot of independent stores, independent restaurants, it's not going to be plug and play. It's going to be a little bit different.
Totally. And something that I think is really interesting, we do have a lot of restaurants and food businesses. That's definitely like a demographic. But we have a lot of service businesses too. And sometimes I think what y'all have to deal with the margins and the upfront costs of running a food business, service businesses can learn a lot from. And so I do want to dig in a little bit on that. I maybe heard some of these sentiments from Kevin, but as the numbers person, I bet you can get even more granular for me. I'm going to make an assumption on how I think some things went, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But just a bakery in general, like, you have to buy the ingredients to make the stuff. So, with the cake that Kevin first told you about, making $2,000 and the ingredients are 20, it's like, well, yeah, if you're cooking in your house or whatever, that's the case. Right. But when you decide to open a bakery, I mean, I can totally picture it. Like, you guys probably built out all the things, right? Like incredible machines and all of that. Some business owners tell me that they do that like way too full scale, like as if they're already this fully operational, and there's like an in-between to that. Maybe you don't need all the materials. Yeah. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think we actually went the other way. So I think we went like maybe too small scale. And that's actually something I wanted to talk about. I was thinking about that today. Because you can obviously think too big, but you can definitely think too small. And it's like, I'm someone who, I tend to be a little bit more like pessimistic. So I'm like, okay, what's the off ramp if we fail? Like, okay, what's going to happen now if we fail? How are we going to deal with this if we fail? Blah, 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 if we could fail. And it's like, I never gave myself time to say, well, what if we succeed? And it's like, well, we kept running into problems of succeeding. And, the capacity, like, didn't have enough storage for the cakes. I had to buy 6 home freezers from like Home Depot and like arrange them around the bakery, which was absolutely ridiculous. Just as a stopgap to having enough space where to put our stuff. And, and then we kept building that out. And, like I said, we built out that walk-in freezer, and then we're dealing with that space issue again. And it's like, how many times do I have to learn my lesson on this? And you don't have to go crazy, but I think I heard someone say, build out for where you anticipate to be in 3 years. You don't have to build out to where you think you're going to be when you're the next Elon Musk or whatever. Like, you're making $100 million a year. But like, where do you think you'll be in 3 years? Do you think you'll be making, $1 million and like 200,000 in profit or something like that? What's that going to look like? What kind of capacity do you need for that? Like, how many tables do you, how much floor space do you, how much, reach-in freezer, reach-in cooler, table space? Like, how are you going to fit all the people that you need in the kitchen in there? Should you get a dishwasher? Is that like an investment versus doing it by hand? Like, oh, let's do it by hand. Like, they'll save money. It's like, yeah, for now, until you're paying someone to do that full time. So, it's like, and I wish I had a little bit more of that, like, kind of rosy-eyed view of things. Just a little bit more, not a lot. Like, I think I done a pretty good job by being pessimistic, but I do wish I had a little bit more of that because I think I would have been a little bit more ambitious in the original build out.
Yeah. I do think like the path y'all took makes so much sense with your and Kevin's background. Like you are thinking money numbers and he's like, oh, we can make this work because he was literally like making it work in a wild situation before. So it makes sense.
Yeah. His whole mantra is like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And I hate that. It causes me so much stress. It's like, I want to know each scenario. Like, give me A, B, C. Give me like, this works. It's okay. It doesn't work. Like, how does this, and he's like, I just don't think like that. He's like, I'm thinking about this week. I'll go, I'm thinking about 2 years from now, which is a good dynamic, I think, if you can communicate, that's so key. And like people say, he said it before and I've said it before. And like a lot of people have said it who've seen this interaction. They're like, you guys are almost more committed than a marriage. You can't and you should walk away from the marriage just willy-nilly. But like this, you can. Like this, because your finances are so intertwined. That's the same with a marriage. But you get what I'm saying. But it's like business-wise, it's extremely difficult. And like you still got to run the business and all that kind of stuff. So you have to work together. You have to find a way to communicate. And you can have different ideas, but if you can't communicate them, then you're gonna have a very hard time. So we definitely have different ideas. We think about things a lot differently. I'm definitely way more like money oriented. It's definitely more of like on the creative side, and I think that's a good partnership. And I think it works. And I think we generally do a good job of communication. There have been breakdowns, but like it happen in any partnership. So you just like, hey, sorry, let's move on. But anyway, yeah, you were saying about growth and planning for growth. And like I was saying, I've gone kind of too on the pessimistic side. So it's like maybe give yourself a few scenarios and then, pick the one that's kind of in the middle.
I think that makes total sense. And that's great self-awareness. I want to talk a little bit more about the strategic decision to lean hard into one of the products that was being made. That really was the result of you being a dollar and cents guy. And we've talked about this before, but in my decade working with small business owners, I continue to be shocked and amazed at how many business owners don't track their expenses and their cost of goods, and don't even track their sales or income. But that's really the only way to confidently say it makes sense to fully invest in this one product that's more successful or selling more. I'm sure Kevin wanted to have certain items in the bakery because he enjoys them, but that couldn't be the maintained approach for what to make indefinitely.
Yeah, I mean, especially around some of the more expensive, time-consuming products, and they might sell all right. And I was like, but ultimately, we're just losing money. And you can lose money on certain products if they're driving the sales of other products. Obviously, it can be a cash dog for you. But if they're taking so much time away, from everything else or being like more productive, especially when you're limited on resources like we are, like probably a lot of independents are, it's like you got to, what does Stephen King say? You got to kill your darlings, like get rid of them, unfortunately. And with the Tres Leches, it was an even easier decision because it's essentially like, we make, I think we're up to like 18 different flavors now. But they're all relatively the same cost. They're very, very close. So I don't bother getting into the weeds too much with the different flavors. And we track it religiously because heavy cream changes in price and eggs change in price. And there was the avian flu. And then there was a bunch of cows that were slaughtered up here because there was flooding and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you watch these prices go up and down and they fluctuate. You build in enough margin that's like not crazy and someone's going to come in and undercut you, or like no one's going to buy it because it's too expensive, but enough so that you can be like, okay, yeah, this went up, but we're still like, doing all right. And actually the first time since we've completely transitioned to Tres Lecheria, we've had to raise prices. And I think that's everybody right now because inflation is just been so devastating and it's just like gone up so much and it's been persistent. And I think we were hoping some things would kind of come down, and they have a little bit. And we were kind of, hoping like supply chains would correct, and they have a little bit, but it's like the inflation's still crazy from that period. So it's like this is the new normal. This is the new price. And it hurts a little bit because at some of the grocery stores, they're approaching this $10 price point, which for me is kind of like a psychological barrier for a single serve. It's not a single serve. It's really more like 3 serving piece of cake, but it's a single, item. So there's a psychological barrier there that I'm like trying to avoid. And maybe over time people kind of get used to it. But so far we're under it. And I don't know, like maybe we can find efficiencies in other ways like automation or, more efficient machinery or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, you have such a huge percentage of what you're calculating investment as like human labor. And that I think for some people is really hard because, in Kevin's case, Kevin's probably like, well, I don't need to make that much, but then that's not super scalable, like.
Yeah. And he did that a lot. And he's like, well, let's not raise it because I was like, yeah, but you're not always going to be the only person doing this. Like someone else, and then we're going to have to give them raises every year and all this kind of stuff. And we want to, I want people to be there forever and be like, this is my favorite company. I love working at this place. And I actually had an employee send me a note like that the other day. And I was like, this is so happy to pinned it up. But I want them to feel even more secure. I want them to feel totally secure, come in and be completely secure, but still, make money and still be able to sell the product and stuff like that. So it's such a delicate balance, especially in service. The labor cost is just such an astronomical part of your loss on the P&L statement. And people don't recognize that because you'll get conversations about well, if you can't pay, a certain amount, then you don't deserve to be in business. And it's well, yeah, McDonald's, what they're paying someone represents such a small portion of the total cost of everything that they're doing versus what we're doing. The cost of the cake is probably 40% is represented by the cost of the labor. Whereas any other fast food place like that is probably 10%. So it's if they pay $1 more, they raise their price by 1%. We pay $1 more, we got to raise it by 4% or 5%, whatever. It's that's significant.
Yeah, it's a big difference. With all of your pricing and packaging and stuff like that,
Oh, yeah.
Are you all standard? And when you talk to a new grocery store, it's here's what we do and you have control over that? Or is it kind of dynamic depending on the partnership and who you're working with?
Yeah, we've had in the past, we tried to be somewhat flexible, and we've had people want we want glass jars and really cute things. And it's how much glass jars cost, and storing them, and then okay, well, we'll return them and you can wash them. Oh, okay, we're gonna wash 300 glass jars. So yeah, so now at this point we're just here's the packaging. It's the standard packaging, and we're trying to get the economies of scale just like any other large business or any business, right? Really. So it's I order 4,000 units of these packages, and we were paying 50 cents per when we first started. Now we're paying 17 cents. So it's that's a savings for you because now I don't have to raise the price. We can be, like I said earlier, we can be more discerning and be nah, we have to do it this way. You're just going to have to accept this packaging because there's no other way financially we can do it.
I do want to make sure I dig into the topic of feedback, and you actually teed it up, kind of talking about how the brick and mortar is a great way for you to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of customers and try new flavors. Can you just talk about feedback in general? And I mean, that could be reviews related to the brick and mortar. I'm honestly a little bit more curious, now that you are in grocery stores, do people talk about you other places that you have to pay attention to? I don't know. Do you hear things from the grocery stores? Just give me any sort of feedback wheels that you guys listen to.
Oh, yeah. Well, we hear from everybody now. Kevin would actually probably be the better person to talk to because he maintains our social media and pay more close attention to that than I do, although I should do, a better job. But yeah, it literally comes from everywhere now because we have such a diverse geographical footprint. So we're as far north as Bellingham and as far south as just south of Portland. And east and west of the state as well, like out on the peninsula. But we'll get feedback from everywhere, from the stores, from people, directly at the store, from people messaging us directly. We get a lot of feedback directly from customers. Like they'll go, hey, we went to this store and they weren't carrying this flavor. And they said they were going to carry this flavor and we talked to them for you, blah, blah, blah. Like, great, thank you. They're like our cheerleaders, which is amazing. We love people for that. And it's just nice. We're a small business. It's like we can use any help we can possibly get. So let us know, like, if they're treating the product properly, or like someone was like, hey, I went to this cafe and I know this is your product and it was expired. And I think you need to tell them about like how long they should keep it out. And like, oh yeah, definitely. And so, we message them about that. Or like someone went to a place, and I'm not going to out anybody here, but they were like, I had this cake and it was a Tres Lecheria cake, and I'm like a huge fan of yours. It tasted exactly like yours. And I asked them where it was from, and they said they made it in-house. And I was like, yeah, that's actually one of our wholesale clients. And so they're tattletales.
Did you reach out to them?
Yeah, I did.
You had to. You have to, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
so they're tattletales for us. And yeah, so I reached out to them and I was like, you guys, that's not cool. Like, we're not. If we had that kind of like private label program, that's one thing, and you could say whatever you want. I don't care, but we're not Cisco. Like, very small business. We need all the name recognition we can get, but try to be nice. Like, you don't want to get, and it could be an honest mistake. Like, it could have been a server who doesn't know. And
1,000,000%.
yeah, I was like, just a heads up, and like, like moving forward, it's got to be like this. So, you got to stand up for yourself and you got to stand up for your product, because stuff like that can happen. But yeah, to kind of circle back to answer your question, the feedback comes from everywhere. It comes from clients. It comes from wholesale accounts. It comes from our distributors. They'll tell us, hey, this flavor is not really selling. We're like, that's weird, because it sells really well in the shop here. So that means maybe we need to do a little bit more promotion, or maybe it's just not as popular with the general public as with people who are more familiar with us.
Absolutely. Okay, one of the last things I want to talk about is the branding evolution of the logo. I know that was really important when you were starting and being resold in other places, so that there was that awareness, right? And the connection between your shop and the grocery store product. You want the customers to know it's you in all these different places and make that association. Can you talk about how that has maybe been maintained in your marketing? Has the packaging evolved? I remember when Kevin and I talked 2 years ago, it had changed a lot. But what are the thoughts now marketing the business beyond just the brick and mortar? Like, it's a brand at this point.
So the marketing, one thing that has changed between now and when you spoke to Kevin is that we've hired a broker. So to kind of like bring the message all together, have everything together in one spot, help us keep a cohesive message, especially among all of our wholesale accounts, and someone just to like keep up on that all the time. Kevin is definitely a perfectionist and detail oriented. And so the label itself has changed over time, kind of to look more aesthetic and how he wants it to look. And I think it's a really nice label. And then like me over here, I'm like, well, how can you make it cheaper? And he's like, well, I could do this size or I could do this size. And so we'll go back and forth, and I'm like, okay, well, can we do this to make it cheaper? And then you could do this to make it look nice, and blah, blah, blah. And so we kind of like do this back and forth where we're both pretty happy. Like, I'm happy with the cost he got on it. And I think he's generally happy with the aesthetic. And I think he would like something a little bit fancier. I think he would like a total wraparound, but the sticker, I think it looks really nice. And
I remember the sticker debate. He wanted to go to colored labels. That was the big evolution the last time, and how that like really did have an impact on sales. I mean, it really...
Yeah, that was a big deal. So, because our branding was kind of like black and white. Everything was black and white. And so we made the labels black and white. And then our distributor at the time was like, hey guys, walk around a grocery store. If you have different flavors and it all looks kind of the same, like, you need to differentiate it somehow quickly so people can see the different colors. And Kevin was kind of like irritated that he should have known that, and also that he had to change it. He told it that way. I totally remember that. He was like, this is a brilliant idea, but I'm pissed at you. Yeah, begrudgingly, like, you're right. But again, there's the communication thing, and he's not going to like shy away from something if he's like, okay, I was wrong about that. Let's change it. He's like, let me just like get my bearings here. And so went around and changed it. And look, the labels look beautiful right away. And then, like I said, they've just continued to change and evolve. And I think they look really good. And we're actually making some new labels because we're debuting like a full sheet cake size, larger size. So yeah, they've been begging us for smaller sizes, for the grab and go cases in the grocery stores. And one guy pulled us aside, like very high level guy at, I think it was the California Milk Advisory Board. And he goes, you know what, you guys should go bigger. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, you guys should go bigger. Like, you want like the family size. People want to like pull it out of the freezer, bring it home, blah, blah, blah. Don't go smaller, go bigger. And we're like, yeah, that's kind of a good idea. So we kind of experimented with it in the store. People were just buying it up. Actually, this weekend, because in Seattle, I guess this must be graduation weekend, sales just fly. Like the whole cakes are just flying off the shelves. And so we've kind of had like a soft debut of that, and it's been doing really well. And then Kevin's been working on the packaging and the marketing and the labels for selling that in grocery stores. So we should be selling it in grocery stores, ideally in the next 6 months as well, maybe even 3 months, if we can get that together here pretty quickly. So it's like we were talking about, like, where can you find growth without spending too much money? And here's a perfect example. Like the full sheet size is like such a low hanging fruit, and there's a need for it. And there's a desire for it out there. So it's like, why don't we do that before looking at opening another brick and mortar, or opening a window, or even trying to get another account? Have a new product that someone is already willing to buy. They told us, like, we will buy it if you make it. It's like, that is such a no-brainer. Like, why wouldn't we do that right away? So I think, like, keeping those things in mind and save you time, money, and effort. It's like much less effort to just make a new size and to completely do something off the wall.
Totally. Same provider and everything. Like, it really just, it maximizes what you get out of that particular relationship or that location. And that concludes our episode. I hope you enjoyed it and were able to take a thing or two away to implement in your own life. Whether it's a new idea that you can bring back to your business or a fresh perspective on how to be a positive influence as a consumer, we share these stories to inspire and create more meaningful connections in your local community.
Behind the review, dig deeper too. Behind the review, get all the news. Food, flowers, fixing, make business boom. Behind the review, dig deeper too.
This episode featured a conversation with Vincent Berretta, one of the co-owners of Tres Lecheria. To learn more about the story, head to yelp.com/behind the review and check out the guest details and episode takeaways. And don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening platform so you get an alert each Thursday that we drop a new episode. To claim your own Yelp business page and start engaging with consumers, visit business.yelp.com. Our theme song is performed by Ali Schwartz and produced by Robbie G of Messerol Sound. The episode was mixed and edited by Jay Yao.